right, as I mentioned, President Trump will be meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this evening in the White House, and the war in Gaza is expected to be the main subject of their discussion. On Friday, President Trump told reporters he was very optimistic that a ceasefire hostage deal between Israel and Hamas could be struck this week, but he acknowledged that the situation changes from day to day. The two sides still seem to have irreconcilable differences on how to bring the conflict to an end. Joining me now to discuss this and more, Congressman Keith Self, who serves on 3 House committees, including the Foreign Affairs Committee. He represents the 3rd Congressional District of Texas. Congressman, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Before we begin our discussion, I want to note how we are praying for the situation in Central Texas, which we're going to be discussing with one of your colleagues, Chip Roy, coming up next. Your district is in the northeast region of Texas, but I'm sure all of Texas has been touched by this tragedy.
And we are praying that they find the survivors. There must be more survivors out there. They will find them. We also praying for the families. This is a tragic loss. 82 people, dozens of children. This is almost incomprehensible, Tony, what happened down there. We've checked, and they are getting supplies that they need, most of what they need. So that's good. Continue to donate money. And pray for the survivors that they will find.
You know, it's events like this that makes us realize how fragile life really is. We go about our activities day after day after day, but when something like this occurs, obviously these families are changed forever. But it also leaves a mark on those who are paying attention that they realize how fragile life is.
Horrific to lose girls that age. You're just not supposed to lose young children. It's devastating.
Congressman, last week you were on the program before the reconciliation bill passed. You were against the bill then, but the House Freedom Caucus secured some agreements from the Trump administration that didn't change the bill, but did some things outside the bill that advanced some of the elements that were changed in the Senate. You ended up supporting the bill. Tell us why.
Well, I supported the bill because we went through the permutations of the Senate, the individual senators, and there was no way that we were going to get anything back from the Senate that would have been an improvement. It just was not going to happen. So therefore, we went outside the bill to make some requests of things that might offset the damage that the Senate did to the bill, because they inserted one simple paragraph that basically gutted the House provisions on the Green New Scam, for instance. So we got some things that I can't yet talk about, agreement, and we will see how they work going forward, that there are more cost cutting across the federal government. Tony, there are lots of places to cut costs across the federal government, as you know. We simply tried to find those areas and get agreement that we will work on those going forward.
You know, I just wanted to bring that up because there was a lot of the Capitol Hill media saying that the Freedom Caucus folded, did not get anything, and in the end they just rolled over. I know that is not the case because I had many conversations, and I think the bill, I shouldn't say the bill, the outcome was much better because the Freedom Caucus began to negotiate on the issue.
Oh, absolutely. They started out with $300 billion. Perhaps in saving $300 billion. What we got was $1.5 trillion, well above that. So that's the progress that the Freedom Caucus, with other conservatives, and I don't want to say only the Freedom Caucus, we had a group of conservatives that worked with us to make this happen. I will tell you, Jody Arrington, the chairman of the Budget Committee, is a warrior. My Texas colleague is a warrior.
Yeah, and I know that, as you said, there's some things you can't talk about, but some of the social issues that were of concern that were taken out in the Senate were also going to be addressed. We look forward to that coming out in the public here in the very near future to see what the administration has agreed to. All right, I want to switch gears now. I want to talk about the president meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this evening. You know, Hamas has been the one turning down proposals, these peace proposals that have come to the table. But given what we saw happen with Iran and how Israel has crippled the Hamas military infrastructure, is the message getting through to Hamas that it's time for them to bring this war to an end?
I doubt it, Tony. I doubt it. I understand they're hoping to get 10 hostages released in the early part of any ceasefire. I doubt that. If they're live hostages, maybe one, maybe two, but very few. Dead hostages, hopefully a few more. But look, this war could be over tomorrow if Hamas would do two things: release the hostages and agree that they cannot govern Gaza. But look, Iran basically, none of their proxies stepped up for them. So I think Hamas is out on a limb now. But frankly, Hamas can survive through a ceasefire as long as they don't give up all of their leverage, which is the hostages. So let's look, Trump and Netanyahu have a very good relationship, and they will come to some sort of agreement, I have no doubt. But there is a third party to this, Hamas. And if Hamas simply goes underground and survives, that could be a problem in the months going forward.
And I did mention in your introduction, you're a retired Army colonel, the situation in Iran, which was a air campaign taking out nuclear sites, much different than on the ground in Gaza. And so Israel has had a difficult time where you have Hamas basically integrated within the rest of the community. It's hard to ferret them out. So there's only so much that the Israeli people will endure in this conflict. I think Israel's having a hard time bringing Hamas and getting them out of Gaza.
Well, they are, but I think the turning point may be the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, are turning against Hamas. I think that's where the United States ought to make their best effort to turn the people against Hamas. So Hamas is in the hundreds of miles of tunnels underneath Gaza. Let's get the Palestinians to help us with Hamas.
What role does the humanitarian aid play in that? I know that Israel has wanted to control that because Hamas has been using it and selling it. What role does that play of making, because I think when people get hungry and they don't have the means of getting what they need to survive for their families, they'll face Hamas.
They should. Believe it or not, Hamas has taken most of the humanitarian aid over the years to build tunnels, to pour concrete, to build fortresses underground. So we need to make sure that any humanitarian aid going in gets to actual citizens on the ground and is not stolen by Hamas to rebuild their infrastructure.
What does the Middle East look like after this is brought to a conclusion there with Hamas? Because we know now that there is the potential of the expansion of the Abraham Accords. This is not something we were looking at 18 months ago. The Middle East is a whole new situation.
I believe that if Iran is truly brought to bear to heal, the Middle East would be even drastically different from what we see today. Abraham Accords would grow with numbers of Sunni Muslim nations. Iran would be down. We have Shia Iran governing 2 less countries. And if we can defeat the Houthis in Yemen, 3 less countries, I think this could be a totally different Middle East. If Iran agrees to forego their Hamas, Hezbollah, their support for them, this could be an entirely different Middle East from what we're even seeing today, Tony. And this could be a monumental change.
Where do you see Turkey factoring into the Middle East going forward?
Well, as you know, I'm the chairman of the Europe Subcommittee on Foreign Affairs, so Turkey is a major issue for us today. Turkey has one of the largest armies in NATO. They participate in NATO operations, but they also keep an eye on Syria. They want to play a major role in the Middle East. I'm not sure which way Turkey is going to go, toward NATO to be a solid NATO partner, or turn to the Middle East to try to be one of the major Muslim nations in the Middle East. I encourage Turkey to stick with NATO. They're an important ally with a large army. But Syria, the power vacuum in Syria is an issue with Turkey. And if they go and try to be one of the big players in the Middle East, I think it will hurt their participation in NATO. I encourage Turkey to stay with NATO, and let's get Turkey and Israel back on good terms, particularly vis-a-vis Syria, because the Russians still want to play in the Middle East. Now, they've moved some of their bases from Syria over to Libya, but we need to keep Russia out of the Middle East as much as we can.
And America's way forward is through diplomatic relations, economic development in the Middle East. Would you agree?
Well, economic development can be handled by the oil-rich states in the Middle East. I'm not for a lot of American taxpayer dollars going into the Middle East. We need to make sure that the Sunni Muslim nations that are so rich over there with oil and gas money, they lead the reconstruction efforts in the various areas, and they're the ones that can return economic stability to the area.
Congressman Keith Self, always great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today.